I've done a ton of research on how to get your kick drum and your sub to sound perfect together. And in this video, we're going to dive right into that. We're going to split the video into three main sections. We're going to look at finding the perfect kick drum sample. Then we're going to look at post-processing on the kick drum and the sub, specifically EQing. And then finally, we're going to look at techniques like sidechaining. Let's get straight into the video. The first thing we want to do is make sure our kick sample is on point. If we pick the wrong sample, that'll ruin the tune. So this is the main thing you need to get right. Now there's two ways to go about finding the perfect kick drum. The first way is to use a reference track. So when you started creating a tune, you should have picked a reference track, and I recommend you get the reference track from a big label. A label that you know has big artists releasing on, because you know those tunes will be the highest quality tunes, which will make your sample selection also the highest quality. So with the reference track, you can replicate, for example, a lot of the drum elements, and then later down the line when you add the basses and other elements, it will all sound really high quality because you're already using example samples that are already high quality, and it will just make your tune sound way better. This is especially helpful if you're a beginner producer. And the more you do it, the more you'll be able to train your brain and develop the skills in order to pick high quality samples in the future. So I would say this is the best way to get better. So let's look at an example here. So I'm using a kick drum from one of my sample packs on my website, and then I've got my reference track here. So I want to put the reference track in, make sure it's the right BPM. I just want to go through the reference track and find where the kick drum is most isolated. So in this case, it's in the intro around about here. So if we play it, you can hear the kick drum, and we can also see the kick drum as well. So then I've got my recreation here. What I've done, first of all, is made sure it's the same length. And if you've got a sample that's too big, but it sounds similar, you can just use this tool to make it smaller, and you can do similar methods on other DAWs like Ableton, and then we would just want to get it to sound as similar as possible. So I've got this, and then the recreation one is this. So that sounds pretty similar, and it's the same shape. So now I'm pretty confident that that is going to be a high quality kick drum sample. Now the other way to pick your kick drum sample is to use your ears. Now if you're quite new to production, you wouldn't have developed the skill set yet in order to pick a high quality kick drum sample. So this won't work for you. But if you've been doing it for quite some time, you'll have developed that skill set, and you'll be able to go through your kick drum samples and pull out one that you know sounds good and whack it in. But then later down the line, you may have to swap that kick drum sample out again when you add the bass, because it might not work with that certain type of bass. And then again, you'll be able to use your ears to navigate through that. For example, I might make my drums for the drop, and then I might make my bass for the drop, and then I'll go through, say, 10 different kick drums and replace the kick drum, and then decide which one sounds best with that bass. So now we've got our kick drum sample. Let's move on to the next step. I've got a kick drum here, and the first thing you want to do is look at the frequencies. So for this example, let's play it. So you can see the fundamental is coming in at around 90 Hertz. For kick drums like this, which are lighter and tighter, often you can get away with very light sidechaining to the sub bass. And that's because the sub bass is hitting in a different range to the kick drum. So let's have a look at the sub bass in this track. So the sub bass is hitting at around 40 to 50 to 60 Hertz. So the sub bass is hitting here, and the kick drum is hitting here. So our sub bass fundamental is hitting between 40 and 60, and our kick drum is hitting around 90. So that means they're not really interfering with each other. So we don't really need to change much in this scenario. So for me, I would maybe apply a light sidechain from the kick drum to the sub bass, and that's it. I would just make sure my kick drum sample is on point and my sub bass sounds exactly like a sub bass. Now if you're struggling to make a sub bass, I've got a good example of one here, and this has just been drawn on here. So give this one a go. Nothing in the effects tab, just looks like this. So what about if your kick drum is hitting in the same frequencies as your sub bass? That's where sidechaining is going to come in. You'll have to do more aggressive sidechaining to the bass. And this is more effective in 4x4 music rather than two-steppy drum and bass style music. So we'll have a look at that in the next section. We've got our perfect kick drum sample and our perfect sub bass sample. So the kick drum looks something like this, and then the sub bass is going to look something like this playing. So this is the sidechain here ducking the sound, and then this is the frequency of the sub bass continuing on and on. And the kick drum will hit here, and then it will hit again here, and so on. There'll be two reasons for applying a certain amount of sidechain. The first reason will be if there's loads of frequency clashing in the kick drum and the sub, and you need to duck the sub in order to hear the kick drum. And then the second one will be if you want to create some sort of groove in your track. So the ducking will create groove and like a bouncy feel to your track to make it more dancey. An alternative sidechain might be something like this. If you don't want it to duck that much, or you might want it to duck like crazy, so it could be like this, or it could be like this. You see, there's just lots of options to take. So let's look at a few examples now. So this is example. So let me play it to you without any EQ and just the sub bass. So that's the sub. So you can hear on my side that the sub bass is ducking every time the kick hits. And in this case, my sub bass parameters are 20 to 150, and you can hear it's quite a high pitched sub bass. Like there's frequencies hitting in both areas where the kick is hitting. So what we can do is we can also boost the area of the kick drum where it's not hitting as much. So let's see here. So what I can do is boost the 40 range of the kick drum, because the fundamental is around here, because I'm ducking the sub bass, so I can give more frequencies to where it's lacking when the sub hits. So if we turn this on, turn it down a little bit, and it's just subtly enhancing the low end of your mix. So now let's listen to it all together. We've got no clashing elements, and we've got a boosted kick drum, and the sub bass is perfectly sidechained in this scenario. So let's look at another drop here. So let's listen to this. So as you can see in this example, I've got crazy sidechain happening to the bass. So the kick is basically just sat there on its own. There's no like interference at all. And this is quite popular in 4x4 music, so bass music, house music. It just gives the track extra groove, and it allows the kick drum to fully hit through the mix. So in this case, I would get my kick drum sample here and apply some EQ again to it. I can work with all the frequencies in this kick drum here. So as you can see, the fundamental is hitting about 97, so what I can do is boost some of the low end. And then if I just turn it down on the mix, and then I can adjust it to taste, and I can even, you know, pick a fundamental value that's the key of the track. So for example, I believe this one's in G, so I could go to G1. And, you know, I can just fatten up the low end. I might not do that much, but, you know, I'm just experimenting here, looking for a sound that sounds good and filling up that low end where it's missing from the sidechain. So that sounds pretty good. And then, yeah, adjust this volume to get it to fit nicely in the mix, because it will increase the overall volume of the tune when you apply EQ like that. And there we have it. Sounds pretty good. We look at one more example here. So this is a drum and bass track. So if we listen to the kick drum here with the sub. So in this case, we just have a fruity limiter on this side chain. So it looks like this. So we can see it's ducking about half the bass. So we can apply a little bit of EQ. So something like this I've found. And then again, find the key that the note is playing. So in this case, it's playing an E. So we can go and boost the frequency of E, which is here, 41. But we don't want to do it as much here because it's not fully ducking the sub bass. We've got our perfect kick drum sample and our perfect bass. So this bit on top of it is just subtly changing, just perfecting it basically. And then we have 3 examples. So now it's your job to go and apply this method to your tracks. Make sure the samples are perfect, make sure the frequencies are hitting in the right place, apply your EQ and apply the appropriate amount of sidechain, and you should have a banger. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, it helps a ton. Make sure to check out my website where there's lots of sample packs and courses to get your hands on. And let me know in the comments what kind of videos you want to see from me in the future, and I'll see you all in the next one.